Hey, welcome. Today we're going to build your personal cognitive toolkit. Think of this as your complete guide to learning smarter, mastering new skills, and just finally breaking through those walls you keep hitting. If you've ever felt stuck, then this is absolutely for you. So, does this question sound a little too familiar? Maybe you've got what I call a graveyard of hobbies somewhere in your house. You know, the dusty guitar, that half-finished coding project. You start out with so much passion, and then, poof, it just disappears. You're not alone in asking this, and I promise you, the answer isn't what you think. And this quote right here, this changes everything. See, quitting isn't some personal flaw or a sign that you lack willpower. The real difference between someone who masters a skill and someone who gives up isn't their personality, it's their strategy. You already have the raw material for genius. Okay, so let's get started by completely tearing down something called the intelligence illusion. It's a myth that most of us were taught about what it even means to be smart. We're so often told that intelligence is just this single score, right? A fixed number, like your IQ, that's supposed to define your entire potential. But what neuroscience and psychology are showing us is a much bigger and, frankly, a much more empowering picture. The reality is, intelligence isn't one thing. It's a whole spectrum. And just look at how diverse our minds can be. Maybe you have linguistic intelligence, a real way with words. Or maybe you've got spatial intelligence, the ability to think in 3D. The goal isn't to be a genius at everything. It's about finding and leaning into your natural superpower. All right, now let's decode your weird genius. We're going to look at those habits you might see as flaws, and I'm willing to bet you'll recognize yourself in one of these and realize these little quirks are actually signs of a highly intelligent mind hard at work. First step, talking to yourself. Nope, it's not madness. It's a super high-efficiency processing strategy called metacognition. When ideas get really complex, your brain literally dumps them out into the open to get organized, almost like using an external hard drive. It's just your mind managing some seriously high-speed traffic. And what about zoning out? You know that moment you're just staring into space and everyone thinks you've checked out? Well, that's your default mode network kicking in. It's your brain's silent background problem-solving system, and its job is to connect unrelated dots. This is exactly where your most creative aha moments are born. And hey, if you're a night owl, it's probably not because you're a procrastinator. It's because when the world finally goes quiet, you gain something incredibly precious: cognitive space. With way fewer distractions, your brain can finally hit that state of deep focus needed for complex work. It's all about finding the perfect environment for your mind. Okay, so now that we've totally reframed how you see your own intelligence and habits, let's get practical. I'm going to walk you through a foolproof method for absorbing new information with incredible speed and efficiency. So, here's the crucial point. Your hardware is more than capable. You've just been trying to run some really outdated software. You know, highlighting every single line in a book, writing notes you're never going to read again, it's just slow and it doesn't work. It's time for an upgrade. So here it is, the four-step process that turns your brain into an absorption machine. First, scan and map. Just quickly look over the headings and the structure without really reading. Next, absorb and hook. Now as you read, create one really memorable hook or punchline for each key idea. Third, teach and replay. Explain the ideas out loud, to someone else or even to yourself. This forces your brain to retrieve it. And finally, lock and solidify. Right before you go to sleep, quickly replay this mental map in your mind to lock it all in. Okay, so you've got the learning method, but what happens when things get tough and that old familiar urge to quit kicks in? Let's dive into the actual neuroscience of why we give up. When you start something new, the learning curve is super steep. You go from knowing nothing to knowing something really fast. Your brain loves this huge rate of new information, so it floods you with dopamine. It feels amazing, kind of like falling in love. But it's a trap. Because eventually the novelty wears off. That steep learning curve flattens out into something called the plateau. And when that happens, boom, the dopamine faucet shuts off completely. That feeling of dopamine withdrawal is the critical moment, that fork in the road, where most people, feeling totally unrewarded, just give up. But here's the cool part. Scientists have discovered that grit isn't just a character trait. It's physical. It actually lives in a part of your brain called the anterior mid-cingulate cortex, or the AMC. The best way to think of it is as a muscle. When you do something you don't want to do, it gets a workout. When you give in, it gets weaker. So how in the world do you train this muscle without burning yourself out? Well, the answer starts with this one simple number. This is the key to building the grit you need to push right through any plateau. This is your workout plan. When you hit that wall and you feel that frustration rising, don't force yourself to grind for another hour. Just push for 15% more. Read one more page. Do one more practice problem. That tiny moment of doing what you really didn't want to do, that's the single rep that makes your ACMC stronger. All right, let's put all of these pieces together. We've talked about your intelligence, your habits, a method for learning, and your willpower. Now let's assemble the complete toolkit. And here it is, your complete 4-part system for mastering anything. First, know your strengths. Identify your intelligence type. Second, embrace your weird genius. Leverage your natural habits instead of fighting them. Third, use that absorption method to learn way faster. And finally, build unstoppable grit by training your willpower muscle with the 15% push rule. This is your new strategy for success. So, the tools are now in your hands. The methods are clear, and the science behind it is solid. The only question left is the one you see right here. What are you going to choose to build first?